In the humid, salt-thickened air of the Mandalika International Circuit, something shifted that wasn't supposed to happen for another year. For months, the rumors had been dismissed as corporate posturing. The Paddock whispers claimed Yamaha's transition to the V4 engine was a desperate, last-minute gamble, a project destined to be mired in development hell. But as the sun dipped low over the Indonesian coastline on the final day of a strictly private test, the digital clocks told a story that silenced the skeptics. Toprak Razgatlioglu wasn't just riding a motorcycle. He was rewriting the hierarchy of the premier class. Inside the garage, there were no cheers, no high-fives, and no celebratory outbursts. Instead, there was a heavy, focused silence. Engineers leaned over monitors, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of telemetry data that shouldn't have been possible for a prototype in its infancy. Outside, the rivals were watching from the perimeter fences with binoculars and stopwatches. They came to see a struggling giant. Instead, they witnessed the birth of a predator. The secret button had been found, and for the rest of the grid, the 2026 season had just become a terrifying reality. For decades, Yamaha was the last holdout of the Inline-Four philosophy. It was a configuration built on corner speed, elegance, and surgical precision, a philosophy that delivered championships for legends, but eventually hit a technical ceiling that even Fabio Quartararo couldn't break through. The decision to scrap everything and build a V4 was more than a technical change. It was a cultural earthquake within the Iwata factory. The blue shift was supposed to be a slow, agonizing transition, yet here at Mandalika, the timeline had been shattered. The pressure on Yamaha's leadership, specifically under the new direction of Paolo Pavesio, had reached a breaking point. The dark years of 2024 and 2025 had left the factory humiliated, watching from the sidelines as the European manufacturers turned MotoGP into a horsepower war. To survive, Yamaha had to stop being cautious and reactive. They had to become aggressive. They needed a machine that could fight in the trenches, and more importantly, they needed a rider who could tame the violence of a V4 engine. Enter Toprak Razgatlioglu. According to insiders, the initial stages of the V4 project were plagued by doubts. The engine was powerful, but it was a brute, a machine that lacked the soul of the M1. But during the final day at Mandalika, the narrative changed. It wasn't just about raw horsepower anymore. It was about a breakthrough in engine management that allowed the bike to finally talk to the rider. The technical wall had been breached, and the Paddock could feel the ground shaking. When Toprak Razgatlioglu announced his move into the Yamaha MotoGP project, the skeptics were vocal. His stoppy style, characterized by late, violent braking and an aggressive entry, was seen by many as incompatible with the delicate balance required by a MotoGP prototype. They said he would destroy the tires in 5 laps. They said his superbike DNA wouldn't translate to the carbon brakes and the specialized Michelin rubber. But those critics didn't account for the Turkish rider's supernatural adaptability. Inside the Pramac Yamaha garage, now the frontline of Yamaha's development, the collaboration between Toprak and his crew has become the stuff of legend. While Jack Miller provided the veteran experience of having ridden nearly every V4 on the grid, Toprak brought something else, a complete lack of fear. He wasn't comparing the V4 to the old M1 because he had no baggage with the old machine. To him, the V4 was a blank canvas. Behind the scenes, the struggle was real. The early sessions saw Toprak fighting the electronics, which were often too intrusive for his manual-heavy riding style. He wanted more control over the rear, more feel on the exit. The secret button wasn't a physical switch on the handlebar. It was the moment the engineers finally trusted Toprak enough to dial back the rider aids and let his natural instincts take over. The results were explosive. By midday at Mandalika, Toprak was no longer fighting the bike. He was wielding it. Yamaha didn't choose Mandalika for its beauty. They chose it because it is an honest laboratory. The circuit's combination of high-speed sweeps and technical sectors creates a nightmare for chassis balance, while the sweltering heat tests engine cooling to its absolute limit. If there was a weakness in the V4, Mandalika would expose it. If the bike was going to fail, Yamaha wanted it to fail here, away from the prying eyes of the official tests. But the failure never came. Instead, Toprak delivered a sequence of laps that felt like a machine gun fire of consistency. In a private test, one fast lap is often dismissed as a glory run, a low-fuel, soft-tire sprint designed to grab headlines. But Toprak's performance was different. He was completing long runs at a pace that remained steady within a tenth of a second, lap after lap. Technical observers noted that the bike's stability under hard braking, Toprak's signature, was now superior to anything Yamaha had produced in a decade. The V4 didn't just offer more top speed on the Mandalika straight, it offered a new kind of brutal smoothness out of the corners. The exit traction issues that had haunted Fabio Quartararo for years seemed to have vanished. Rumors suggested that a revolutionary new engine mapping, hidden within the complex ECU, had finally unlocked the V4's ability to put power to the ground without incinerating the rear tire. Despite being a private test, the privacy was an illusion. In the high-stakes world of MotoGP, there are no secrets. Rival technicians from Ducati and Aprilia were reportedly monitoring the track with high-frequency sensors, and what they saw triggered an immediate reassessment of the 2026 threat level. The secret button was the talk of the paddock. Word spread that Toprak had recorded top speeds that rivaled the Desmos Disi, but without the traditional instability that often plagues new engine designs. The atmosphere in the garage during these moments was described as clinical. There was no euphoria because the team knew the weight of what they had discovered. For Fabio Quartararo, watching the data from the sidelines, the pressure was immense. The arrival of a newcomer who could immediately unlock the potential of a bike Fabio had spent years asking for created a complex psychological dynamic. The media began to swirl with speculation. Was this just a Mandalika special, or had Yamaha truly found the holy grail of engine design? The internal GPS data, the most guarded secret in the garage, confirmed that Toprak was gaining time in areas where Yamaha used to lose it. He was no longer just a braking specialist. He was a complete threat across every sector. The paddock was no longer asking if Yamaha would be competitive, they were asking how soon they would be winning. The real twist of the Mandalika test happened away from the stopwatches. It happened on a technical graph. For months, there had been a disconnect between what the riders felt and what the sensors reported. The riders would complain of a lack of feel while the data showed everything was within parameters. At Mandalika, for the first time in the V4 project, the two lines on the graph finally touched. This was the convergence. Toprak returned to the pits after a grueling 15-lap simulation, and instead of a long technical debrief, he simply pointed to a specific point on the telemetry screen and gave a short, sharp nod to his crew chief. He didn't need to say anything. The data showed that his physical inputs were now being translated perfectly by the V4's electronics. The secret button was this symbiotic understanding. This moment was the realization of a project that many had written off as a desperate Hail Mary by a dying manufacturer. The V4 wasn't just a future idea anymore, it was a weapon. The development direction had been validated. The Turkish sensation had found the key to the Japanese machine, and the resulting performance was a silent warning to every rider on the grid. The era of Yamaha's exploration and uncertainty was officially over. As the crates were packed and the Mandalika circuit fell silent, the impact of the test was only beginning to be felt. Yamaha's strategic shift was now undeniable. By arriving early for their own private sessions before the official shakedown at Sepang, they had gained a psychological and technical advantage that caught the rest of the manufacturers off guard. The strategy was simple: arrive early, work in silence, and hit the official tests with a bike that was already race-ready. The presence of Jack Miller, Alex Rins, and Fabio Quartararo alongside Toprak created a supertest environment that maximized every minute of track time. But while the team's philosophy had shifted from cautious to proactive, the real test was still to come. Mandalika proved that the V4 has the speed. It proved that Toprak has the talent to tame it. But the MotoGP season is a marathon of different climates, different grip levels, and the relentless pressure of competition. The secret button worked in the heat of Indonesia, but will it hold up when the full grid is snapping at their heels in Malaysia? The paddock is waiting, the rivals are